Imagine growing up your entire life with someone who knows you better than anyone else. Someone who shares your blood, your DNA, and your deepest secrets. Someone who's always been there, by your side, in every moment. Now picture this. One night, everything changes. Suddenly, the lines blur, and you realize there's so much more to the person you've known all your life. But is it too late to turn back? Or is it finally time to embrace the truth? Asterisk. Welcome to a story that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Tonight, I'm sharing a true story that's raw, emotional, and deeply personal. It's a story about family, identity, and the courage to confront the unexpected. Stay tuned. I remember it like it was yesterday. With our parents gone, it was just me and my twin brother alone in the house. But then, in a single moment, he did something so unexpected, so electrifying, that it changed everything. And it's a memory I'll never forget. It started as a night like any other. The kind that settles into an unspoken rhythm when you've spent your whole life sharing a space with someone. Our parents had gone out for the evening, leaving the house unusually quiet. A silence broken only by the occasional hum of the refrigerator or the creak of old wood beneath our feet. But this wasn't the first time we'd been left to our own devices. We'd grown used to it, turning these nights into our own little world where time seemed to stretch as if daring us to fill it. I was on the couch, idly scrolling through my phone. But my attention wasn't on the glowing screen in my hand. Across from me, my brother was stretched out in his usual spot, one arm draped over the backrest. His eyes flickered between the TV and whatever thought was pulling his focus. His presence was as familiar to me as the air I breathed, and yet tonight, something about him felt different. I couldn't quite name it, but the shift was there, lingering in the way his gaze seemed to linger just a second too long, or how his voice carried a tone I couldn't decipher. Movie or game? He asked suddenly, his voice breaking through the soft hum of the television. He turned his head toward me, and for a moment, his dark eyes caught mine in a way that made me forget to answer. I shrugged, playing it cool. "Whatever you want," I said, smirking. He grabbed the remote, flipping through options with a deliberate slowness that I knew was meant to test my patience. I couldn't help but smile at his theatrics. "If you're going to take that long, I'm choosing a rom-com over my dead body," he shot back, laughing. It was easy with him. Our banter was the way we moved through each other's lives like two sides of the same coin. But even as the laughter filled the room, that undercurrent of something else lingered, subtle but undeniable. Eventually, he landed on a movie we'd both seen a dozen times. The kind you don't need to pay attention to because the dialogue is etched into your memory. We settled into the quiet comfort of it, the glow of the screen casting soft shadows against the walls. But my focus wasn't on the movie. Not really. My mind was elsewhere, drawn to him in a way that felt both familiar and unsettling. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught him glancing at me. It was quick, almost imperceptible, but it sent a ripple of awareness through me. My brother was always bold, the one who spoke his mind without hesitation, but tonight, there was a hesitation in him that mirrored my own. It was in the way he shifted his weight or how his hand moved absent-mindedly along the edge of the couch, as if he were testing the air between us. "What's going on in that overthinking head of yours?" he asked finally, unable to take the silence anymore. He shook his head, smiling faintly. "Nothing, liar." "Okay, maybe something," he admitted, leaning forward, his elbows resting on his knees. The light from the screen played across his face, highlighting the sharp angles that mirrored my own. You ever think about how weird it is being twins? I mean, weird how people assume we're the same. Same face, same thoughts, same everything. But we're not really. I nodded, though his words stirred something in me. We'd always been seen as a unit, interchangeable in the eyes of most people, but he was right. We weren't the same. He was the fearless one, the one who charged headfirst into life, while I hung back, content to observe. Yet in moments like this, when his guard was down, I saw the parts of him that felt closer to my own, a quiet vulnerability he rarely let anyone else see. It's just easier for people to lump us together. I said, my voice quieter than I intended. It's not like we've ever really shown them otherwise. His gaze lingered on me, and I felt the weight of the space between us. Maybe we should, he said, his tone softer now, almost tentative. Before I could respond, he leaned back again, his casual posture betraying none of the tension I felt coiling in the air. I turned back to the screen, pretending to watch, but my mind was racing, caught between the familiarity of the moment and the unfamiliar pull that seemed to draw us closer. The minutes stretched on, and the silence between us grew heavier, loaded with unspoken words. I didn't know what to say, didn't even know if there was anything to say, but he, as always, found a way to break through. "You're quiet tonight," he said, his voice softer now, almost tentative. "What's going on in that overthinking head of yours?" "Nothing," I lied, because the truth was tangled in a web of emotions I wasn't ready to unravel. "Just tired," he didn't press, but his eyes searched mine as if he could see the thoughts I was trying to bury. For a moment, I thought he might call me out on it, but instead, he shifted closer, his knee brushing against mine in a way that felt deliberate. The contact sent a jolt through me, and I struggled to keep my composure. "Sure, it's nothing," he asked, his tone lighter now, teasing, but there was an edge to it, a challenge that made my pulse quicken. I forced a smile, shrugging. "Yeah, sure." The tension between us was almost palpable now, a silent current that neither of us seemed willing to name, but it was there, undeniable in the way his gaze lingered or how the air between us seemed charged with something neither of us could ignore. As the night wore on, the distance between us seemed to shrink. His easy laughter filled the room, pulling me back into the comfort of the moment. But beneath it all, that unspoken tension remained, waiting. In the quiet, I realized something. This wasn't just another night. Something was shifting between us, and there was no going back. Liam had always been the louder one, the one who could fill any silence with a joke or a story. But tonight, his usual bravado was muted, replaced by something I couldn't quite name. I felt it every time our knees brushed or when his gaze lingered just a moment too long. It wasn't the kind of tension that felt uncomfortable. It was something else, something that sent a thrill through me. I didn't want to admit it, but I wondered, "Do you ever think about what it would be like if we weren't twins?" he asked suddenly, pulling me from my thoughts. I blinked at him, surprised by the question. "What do you mean?" He shrugged, leaning back against the couch. "I don't know. Just if we weren't, maybe things would feel different." It was such a strange thing to say, and yet it hung in the air between us, heavy and unspoken. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but something in his tone made me hesitate, like he wasn't sure of the answer himself. "I guess it's hard to imagine," I said finally. "We've always been us." "Yeah," he murmured, his eyes flicking to mine for a brief second before darting away. "Always." The word carried a weight I couldn't quite unpack. But before I could dwell on it, he pushed himself off the couch. "You want a drink?" "I'm grabbing one." "Sure," I said, my voice coming out quieter than I intended. I watched him disappear into the kitchen, my thoughts spinning as I tried to make sense of the strange shift between us. Liam had always been my other half, the person who knew me better than anyone, but tonight, it felt like we were standing on the edge of something new, something neither of us could fully grasp. When he came back, he handed me a beer, his fingers brushing against mine for just a second too long. He sat closer this time, his thigh pressing against mine as he settled back into the couch. It was such a small thing, but made my heart race in a way I couldn't ignore. "Do you ever wonder why we never talk about real stuff?" he asked, his voice low and thoughtful. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Like we're close." "Right, closer than most people, but there's still stuff we don't talk about." "Everybody has things they don't talk about," I said, though the words felt hollow as they left my mouth. He turned to me, his eyes searching mine with an intensity that made me feel exposed. "We're not everybody, Ethan. We're us." The word struck something deep inside me, and I felt my breath catch. He wasn't wrong. We weren't like most people. We'd always been closer, understood each other in ways no one else could, but there were still things we avoided, things we didn't dare put into words. "I guess," I trailed off, unsure of how to finish the sentence. "You guess," he repeated, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "That's your answer." I rolled my eyes, trying to deflect. "What do you want me to say?" "Something real," he said simply, his voice softer now. I didn't know how to respond to that. The weight of his gaze was too much, so I turned away, staring at the TV, even though I wasn't paying attention to it. He didn't press me, but he didn't move away either. The warmth of his leg against mine was a constant reminder of how close he was, how impossible it was to ignore the strange pull between us. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy, until he broke it again. "Do you ever think about us differently?" My heart skipped a beat at his words, and I turned to look at him, searching his face for some hint of what he meant. But his expression was unreadable. His eyes locked on mine, as if daring me to answer. "I don't know what you mean," I said, though my voice wavered slightly. "Yeah, you do," he said, his tone quiet but firm. "I think you've thought about it, even if you don't want to admit it." The air between us felt electric, charged with something that had been building for years but was only now coming to the surface. I wanted to deny it, to brush off his words and pretend they didn't mean anything, but I couldn't. Not when every glance, every touch, every unspoken word between us told a different story. "What if I have?" I asked finally, my voice barely above a whisper. His eyes widened slightly, and for a moment, he looked as uncertain as I felt, but then his expression softened, and he leaned in just enough that I could feel his breath against my skin. "Then maybe I'm not the only one." The words hung in the air between us, and I felt a rush of emotions. Fear, excitement, confusion, all tangled together in a way that left me breathless. He didn't move, didn't push me, but the intensity of his gaze told me he was waiting, giving me the space to decide. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what this meant, didn't know what it would change, but in that moment, with him so close and the weight of his words pressing down on me, I realized I didn't care. He didn't move, his eyes stayed locked on mine, unwavering, his expression unreadable, yet filled with something I couldn't turn away from. Every fiber of my being told me to say something, to do something, but I was frozen in place, caught between fear and an undeniable pull toward him. "Ethan," he said softly, my name slipping from his lips like a secret meant just for me. "You could talk to me. You always could." It wasn't the words themselves, but the way he said them, quiet and gentle, stripped of all his usual bravado. He wasn't teasing or testing me anymore. He was being raw and vulnerable in a way that sent a tremor through me. "I know," I murmured, though my voice felt foreign in my own ears. "It's just complicated." "Complicated doesn't mean bad," he said, leaning back slightly, though the space between us still felt charged. "Sometimes it just means it's worth figuring out." The way he looked at me then, steady, unflinching, made my heart race. It wasn't just the intensity of his gaze, but the depth of it. Like he saw through every wall I'd ever put up, and for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to hide. I knew something was coming, and I was right, without fully realizing it. I leaned closer to him, our knees brushing again, but this time with purpose. He didn't flinch or move away. Instead, he tilted his head just slightly, his eyes searching mine for any hint of hesitation. "What are we doing?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," he admitted, his lips twitching into the faintest of smiles. "But it doesn't feel wrong, does it?" I wanted to say no, to insist that this was a mistake, that we'd wake up in the morning and pretend this never happened, but the truth lodged itself in my throat, refusing to be ignored. It didn't feel wrong. If anything, it felt like something that had been building for years, waiting for this moment to break free. "No," I said finally, the word falling from my lips like a confession. That was all it took. He moved first, closing the remaining space between us until I could feel the warmth of his breath against my skin. My heart hammered in my chest, my thoughts a tangled mess of anticipation and fear. But when his lips met mine, the noise in my head fell away, leaving only the sensation of him. The kiss was slow at first, tentative, as though we were testing the waters of something neither of us fully understood. His hand found its way to my jaw, his fingers brushing against my skin in a way that sent shivers down my spine. I didn't think. I couldn't. I just kissed him back, letting myself get lost in the moment. It didn't feel strange or awkward, not like I'd feared it might. If anything, it felt natural, like this was where we were always meant to end up. His touch grew bolder, his lips pressing harder against mine as his other hand slipped to the back of my neck, pulling me closer. I let out a soft, involuntary sigh, and he smiled against my lips, his confidence bolstered by my reaction. When we finally pulled apart, my chest heaved with shallow breaths, my mind still reeling. He didn't move far, his forehead resting lightly against mine as his fingers stayed tangled in my hair. His eyes searched mine, a hint of uncertainty flickering in their depths. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low but steady. I nodded, though the reality of what had just happened was only beginning to sink in. "Yeah, I think so," he chuckled softly, his thumb brushing along my jaw. "Good," he said simply, his smile widening into something more genuine. "Because I don't either." The weight of his words settled over me, grounding me in a way I hadn't expected. This was him, my twin, my other half. And yet, in this moment, he felt like something more, someone I'd been drawn to without even realizing it. We didn't say much after that. The silence between us was no longer heavy with tension, but instead filled with a quiet understanding. But we both knew this wasn't over. There was something still coming. His arms slipped around my shoulders, pulling me against him as we sank back into the couch. I rested my head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. And for the first time in what felt like forever, everything felt right. "Do you think this changes everything?" I asked finally, my voice barely above a whisper. He tilted his head, his gaze meeting mine with a depth that made my chest tighten. "Does it have to?" I hesitated, his question ricocheting in my mind. "I don't know. Maybe it already has," he nodded slowly, his fingers absent-mindedly tracing patterns along my arm. The touch was soothing, a quiet reassurance in the face of the unknown. "Maybe that's not a bad thing," he said after a pause, his voice laced with a tentative hope I didn't expect. Such a simple statement, yet it carried the weight of everything we weren't saying aloud. The truth was, I didn't know what this meant for us. Didn't know if we could keep this thing, whatever it was, contained within the walls of our home. But his confidence, his quiet certainty, steadied me in a way I couldn't explain. "What happens when someone finds out?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. He frowned, his fingers stilling against my skin. "No one has to know, Ethan. This is ours. No one else gets a say in it." His words stirred something deep inside me, a mix of relief and fear. I wanted to believe him, to trust that we could keep this moment untouched by the outside world. But doubt lingered, a shadow at the edge of my thoughts. He must have sensed my hesitation because he shifted slightly, his hand moving to cup my cheek. "Hey," he said softly, his thumb brushing against my skin. "We don't have to figure it all out right now. One step at a time, okay?" I nodded, his touch grounding me once more. He had always been the one to dive in head first, unafraid of what lay ahead. I envied that about him, his ability to embrace the unknown without hesitation. And for the first time, I found myself leaning into that part of him, trusting him to guide me through the uncertainty. The sound of the clock ticking in the corner pulled me back to the present, a quiet reminder of the world outside our little bubble. I sat up slightly, glancing toward the window where the night sky stretched endlessly, stars flickering faintly against the darkness. "We should probably head to bed," I said, though my voice lacked conviction. He agreed, though he made no move to let me go. Instead, his hand lingered on my arm, his touch anchoring me to the moment. Reluctantly, we untangled ourselves from the couch, the warmth of his body leaving a faint ache in its absence. The house was eerily quiet as we made our way upstairs, the faint creak of the wooden stairs the only sound to break the stillness. He walked just ahead of me, his presence a steady reassurance in the dark. When we reached my bedroom door, I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. He stopped just behind me, His closeness, a tangible presence that sent a shiver down my spine. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft but steady. I nodded, though the knot in my chest told a different story. "Yeah, I don't want this to end." His hand found mine, his grip firm yet gentle. "It doesn't have to." The weight of his words settled over me, a quiet promise that eased the tension in my chest. I pushed the door open, stepping inside as he followed close behind. The room felt smaller with him there, the air charged with an unspoken energy that made my skin prickle. He didn't ask for permission as he pulled back the covers and settled onto my bed, his movements as natural as if this had always been our routine. I hesitated for a moment, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts, but the sight of him there, calm and unbothered, silenced them all. "Come on," he said, patting the empty space beside him. "It's just me." His words carried a weight that made my throat tighten. It wasn't just anything, it was him, my twin, the one person who knew me better than I knew myself. And yet, in that moment, he felt like something more, someone I was seeing for the first time. I slipped into bed beside him, the mattress dipping slightly under our combined weight. He turned onto his side, propping himself up on one elbow as his gaze met mine. The faint glow of moonlight filtering through the curtains cast soft shadows across his face, highlighting the sharp angles that mirrored my own. "You're overthinking again," he said, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Can you blame me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "No," he admitted, his expression softening. "But you don't have to, not tonight." His hand moved to my face, his fingers brushing against my jaw in a touch so gentle it made my chest ache. I didn't flinch or pull away. Instead, I let myself lean into his touch, my eyes slipping closed as the weight of the moment washed over me. When his lips met mine, it wasn't tentative like before, it was deliberate, full of a quiet intensity that stole the breath from my lungs. His hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer as his body pressed against mine, his warmth seeping into me like a second skin. I didn't think about what this meant or what would come next. I couldn't. All I could do was feel the way his fingers tangled in my hair, the way his breath hitched against my lips, the way his heartbeat matched mine in perfect rhythm. Time blurred, the world outside fading into nothingness as we lost ourselves in each other. Every touch, every whispered breath felt like a revelation, a discovery of something that had always been there, but never acknowledged. I think you can imagine what we did eventually. The only thing I could say is that it was crazy big, even so big that it hurt a little. And when we finally pulled apart, my chest heaved with shallow breaths, my skin tingling with the remnants of his touch. He didn't move far, his forehead resting lightly against mine as his fingers stayed tangled in my hair. "I'm not going anywhere," he said softly, his voice steady despite the emotion behind it. I nodded, unable to find words to respond, because for the first time in my life, I believed him. The morning light filtered through the curtains, spilling soft gold across the room. I stirred, disoriented for a moment, before the warmth of his arm around me brought everything rushing back. My chest tightened as I remembered the events of the night before, the weight of it settling over me like a fragile secret. He was still asleep beside me, his face relaxed in a way I rarely saw, his features so familiar and yet so different in this context, making my heart clench. This was him, not just my twin, but someone I'd seen in every light, every angle, and now someone who was something more. I stayed still, watching him breathe, my mind a storm of emotions I couldn't name. Part of me wanted to slip out of bed to put some distance between us before the weight of the day set in, but another part, the stronger part, couldn't bear to move. His presence was a tether grounding me in a way I didn't understand but craved all the same. As if sensing my thoughts, he stirred, his eyes fluttering open and meeting mine with a softness that made my chest ache. He didn't speak right away, just held my gaze, the quiet between us filled with everything we weren't saying. "Morning," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. For a moment, neither of us moved, the weight of the night before lingering between us. Heavy, but not unwelcome. His hand moved to my face, his thumb brushing against my cheek in a touch so tender it made my breath catch. "You okay?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. I nodded, though the knot in my chest hadn't loosened, just trying to figure out what this means. His lips quirked into a small smile. "It means we stopped pretending." The simplicity of his words caught me off guard. "And then what?" His expression softened, his fingers stilling against my skin. "Then we figure out together." His certainty, his quiet confidence, steadied me in a way I hadn't expected. I didn't have all the answers, I wasn't sure I ever would, but his presence, his unwavering belief that this was okay, was enough to quiet the storm in my mind. The day moved slowly, every moment steeped in a newfound awareness. We didn't talk about it, not explicitly. Instead, we moved through the motions of the morning with an unspoken understanding that what had happened wasn't something we needed to dissect. It simply was. It wasn't until the afternoon that the weight of the outside world crept back in. A message from Mom popped up on my phone, a reminder that they'd be home soon. The bubble we'd been living in, the fragile space where time seemed to stand still, would soon burst. "They'll be back in a few hours," I said, my voice breaking the silence. He glanced at me, his expression unreadable. "I don't know," I admitted. "What happens now?" He sat down, his coffee mug leaning back against the counter, with a calm that belied the tension I felt. "Nothing has to change, Ethan, not unless we want it to." His words settled over me, a quiet reassurance I didn't know I needed. "What if they figure it out?" "They won't," he said simply, his confidence unwavering. "This is ours. No one else needs to know." The truth of his words calmed me, though a small part of me still ached with the weight of the secret we now shared. It wasn't shame. Not exactly. It was more a fear of the unknown, of what it meant to navigate this new territory with only each other to lean on. As the hours ticked by, the house began to fill with the familiar noise of life returning. The sound of our parents' voices, their laughter, the clatter of suitcases being unpacked. It all felt jarring after the quiet intimacy of the past day. We fell seamlessly into our usual roles, the practiced ease of our interactions hiding the undercurrent of something new. But as the evening wore on, I felt the weight of it pressing down on me again. The secret we shared, the thing we hadn't dared to name, felt impossibly large in the confines of our small house. Later that night, after the house had fallen silent again, I found him sitting on the couch, his gaze fixed on the faint glow of the TV. He didn't look up as I approached, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched as though he were bracing himself for something. "Can't sleep?" I asked, my voice breaking the quiet. "Something like that," he replied, his tone neutral but heavy with unspoken words. I sat down beside him, the space between us feeling wider than it had in days. For a long moment, we didn't speak, the quiet stretching out in a way that felt almost suffocating. But then he turned to me, his eyes searching mine with an intensity that made my heart race. "Do you regret it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The question caught me off guard, but the answer came without hesitation. "Never." His lips twitched into a faint smile. The relief that washed over me was immediate, easing the knot in my chest that had been tightening all day. He shifted closer, his hand finding mine in a gesture so simple, yet so significant it made my breath hitch. "This doesn't have to be complicated," he said softly, his fingers tightening around mine. "We just take it one step at a time." I nodded, his words grounding me in a way nothing else could. For the first time in what felt like forever, the uncertainty didn't feel overwhelming. It felt manageable, like something we could navigate together. As the night stretched on, the quiet between us turned comfortable once more. His arm draped around my shoulders, pulling me close, and I let myself sink into the warmth of him. Whatever came next, whatever challenges we faced, I knew one thing for certain. We had each other, and for now, that was enough. Asterisk. Thank you for watching this powerful and emotional story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to stay updated with more heartfelt tales from the LGBT community. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think about the story? How did it resonate with you? Let's keep the conversation going. See you in the next episode.